ICQ Podcast episode 471, Krampus event and Yaseu UK. Well, hello fellow amateur radio enthusiasts and welcome to episode 471 of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported in this episode by Pete Leng, Zulu Lima 4 Tango Echo, Daniel Robson, Golf Mike 6, Charlie Mike Quebec, and our monthly subscription donors. In this episode, we're joined by Martin M1MRB, Caryn KD2 Golf Uniform Tango, and Edmund Mike 0 Mike November Golf to discuss the latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOA, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is a double feature where we take a moment to chat to Yaseu UK about all their other stuff to do with radio and how it impacts things in the amateur radio world, and the Krampus event that's taking place next week. There's a prompt here now for you guys to make sure you're signed up to the ICQ Podcast newsletter as your opportunity to help shape your podcast into the future, as we'll be conducting our listener survey in December this year. So make sure you sign up to the newsletter by going to ICQPodcast.com and signing up there, and we'll make sure you get a link to that newsletter in December. Now, our donors, keep us advert free. Our monthly subscription donors provide some wonderful base, to us pay our bills and keep your show on the air advert free for you. And we're delighted to also thank some one-off donors this episode. So Pete Lane, Zulu Lima 4 Tango Echo says, please make sure you get Mrs. B some of those classy biscuits for Christmas. And I think he's thinking of those lovely ones that come in a tin with tartan that look good, seem absolutely brilliant with snow on the ground, etc. So yeah, we'll certainly get some of those. He says, thanks for the interviews with Hans at QRP Labs, and just got one of his QMXs and what an outstanding radio for the price. All the very best for the new year, Pete. Zulu Lima 4 Tango Echo. So thanks a lot, Pete, for your support. And Danny, GM6 Charlie Mike Quebec says, thanks for doing the podcast. He enjoys listening to him. So thanks a lot, Danny, for your kind support. We operate on a value for value model, where it's a very simple concept. If you find value in what we do, entertainment, you've laughed, you've learnt, etc., or we've just been your friends in a car on a long journey, turn that into a monetary figure and go to ICQPodcast.com/donate. Whatever you can send our way to show that value, which is a value to you, we'll go towards our running costs and keeping your show advert free and being produced every fortnight. So please do consider us this episode. Right, then we're going to join Martin, Caryn and Edmund to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including AO73's birthday and a milestone for digital voice. As always, hope you enjoy.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to the ICQ Podcast News Roundtable for episode 471. Now tonight, we got a few shortages, but it doesn't matter. We're going to still have fun and bring you some interesting stories. Unfortunately, Dan Romacek can't join us, KB6NU. It's Thanksgiving, and I know he's travelling at the moment, so unfortunately Dan won't be with us. And Ed Durant, DD5LP, over in Germany, can't join us. He's got something else more important booked. And that sounds nasty, but Ed will be back with us the next one, and we haven't had a falling out, honest. Right, but what I do have with me is we have Caryn Eve Murray, KD2GUT. Hi, Caryn.
Hello, Martin. Real glad to be here, and I want to wish listeners in the United States a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, and I hope you'll bury the hatchet and not get upset with each other. But it's strange when families get together. It's not always the best of times, but I'm really hoping that you enjoy yourselves. Let's put it that way. Edmund is also with us, Mr. Edmund Spicer, MM0.
No, just the one. I'm not in Scotland.
No, yeah. M0MMG. Hi, Edmund.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, I try. I know. Very trying. So, just the three of us tonight, but we'll still bring you some interesting facts along the line. So, our first news story. happy 12th birthday to AO73. The FunCube satellite, FunCube 1. Now, FunCubes are terrific little devices. I've also got a couple of FunCube dongles for receiving this as well, which came out at the time. But Caryn, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. FunCube has been a wonderful tool, especially for educational purposes. This satellite has been up now as of November 21st. It's been up for a dozen years, and it was launched in 2013. And folks in the British Isles and Europe get a chance to have a go with the FunCube 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening. And the morning passes are especially useful if there are schools in session and kids, teachers, classes can make use of that, which is a marvelous use of this satellite. And of course, in the evening, hams can have a go at it during the day too, but primarily they like to make this available for educational purposes. It's been a busy little satellite. According to the report that we were running and we saw on AMSAT, since it was in orbit, it has had, goodness, it's fast approaching 12 million frames of telemetry, which is pretty amazing, according to the data provided by AMSAT. I think these kinds of satellites are super important for a number of reasons, but primarily the educational mission is the biggest, I think. For one thing, it teaches the next generation about satellites and piques their interest, piques their curiosity. It's a resource for education. And on the amateur radio side, frankly, I think it engages them in possibly coming on board later or even as a young ham. It's a 300 milliwatt FunCube, but has been kept quite busy on sideband and CW and appropriately named FunCube. How can you resist a name like FunCube? So we wish it well, and we hope next year, when we're talking about this on the podcast, we can celebrate that FunCube has become a teenager. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, I hope it does become a teenager. 13 is one of my favourite numbers, actually. Not only because Colin and I were both born on the 13th, but it's always been quite lucky for me. So hopefully we will talk about it next year. I remember a few years ago I was doing some work for the railway as a contractor, and I was at one of the stations early one morning, and I was talking to the station manager. I've been talking to the station manager about this, and I took my little FunCube dongle, put an aerial on top of the van I was using, and was decoding it. And interesting, it got the data and bits and pieces down as it went past over. And the number of people who were standing around the van at the end of the pass, I think I had about 12 people who've never even knew about this. So it is an interesting and fun device, as its name says. Edmund, we left you anything to say on this one?
Well, it's scary how quickly time goes past, because 2013 was the year that I upgraded from the intermediate license to the full license, and I actually bought myself a FunCube dongle as a kind of self-congratulatory present, and I had great hopes for this thing because I seem to remember that not long after it was launched, there was an initiative called, was it 73 on 73, where if you made 73 contacts or received 73 signals or something from it, you could get some kind of certificate, because the other name for FunCube 1 is AO73. And then just various reasons, life, busyness, I just never got round to really doing anything with the satellite at all. I'm a big disappointment to myself on the satellite front, incidentally. I've got an elk log periodic antenna here that I've had for years and years and years, which I do use terrestrially sometimes, but I am still yet to have my first QSO through a low Earth orbiting satellite. I haven't managed it on any of the FM sats yet, so let alone a transponder like this one. But I will add that to the ever-growing list of things that I would like to achieve in 2026. The most interesting bit of information for me in this news story, which had never crossed my mind, but thinking about it, I suppose it makes complete sense, is that the passband can be up to 15 kilohertz higher depending on the onboard temperature, and the lower the temperature it is, the higher the frequencies you get. And it's things like that that you just don't think of normally, I guess, Martin. But yeah, I agree with Caryn. If it's been in service successfully since 2013, there's no real reason why it shouldn't survive for one more year and become a teenager, as you said, Caryn. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, well, they're fantastic little devices. I think they're about 10 centimetres square, 4 inches from in my day. I know Chris gets annoyed with me for not using centimetres, but yeah, they're really small, but it does such a great job. And every now and again, I pull out the FunCube dongle and I put it on and I have another look at it. And I love watching and seeing the information. And sometimes you'll see greetings messages to schools in amongst the downloadable, and you'll see telemetry stuff within the downloadable items you download. And it's one of those things where if you can catch it going over, you can always excite people because they say, "Well, you actually received it." Yeah. And then when you tell them how small it is, they find it hard to believe. But yeah, and then the thing I wasn't 100% aware of was the output power is around about 300 milliwatts. Well, that's quite low, but in fact, there's nothing in the way of coming back down. So why would you want more power than that? So it was a good one. Great little device.
Even though the downlink is on VHF rather than UHF, you can still get useful amounts of gain using a small Yagi, even a handheld one. So that low power output isn't necessarily the obstacle that it may seem at first. And last but not least, the FunCube dongle, I seem to remember a few years ago an upgraded version came out, and I'm pretty sure I've seen in the various magazines, radio magazines, in recent times, adverts for the FunCube dongle. So, whilst I'm not going to say definitely that you can buy a brand new one in November 2025, because I don't know if you can or not, but even if you can't, you may well be able to purchase a nearly new one from somewhere that's been manufactured in the last couple of years rather than say 13 years ago when my one was made.
Yeah, and I think they are still made, Edmund. So I think one of the emporiums still advertises them. So they're good news. Good news. So yeah, it might be something that if you've not had a look at one, you might fancy just having a play. That's a good one. Move to our next news story. I'm going to give this one to Caryn again first, Edmund. But neural codecs called a milestone for digital voice. Now, we have all these different codecs out there. It'd be nice to get one that works across the board, and this looks like it's working mainly with FreeDV, and FreeDV is normally used in from my understanding, on the HF bands. So I haven't actually done any of this, but on HF bands digital voice, but maybe I need to have a go at it, Caryn. What do you think?
Well, I can't say that I have used it either, but I was really captivated by this story and the promise that it holds. Three words just really grabbed my attention. Adaptive neural network. It sounds almost biological, like a living thing. It it seems to be the milestone that it's being heralded as, in that it replaces the traditional signal processing, which is going to be light years away from the kind of quality you get with a traditional digital voice, or lack of quality in some cases. I do spend some time anyway, on DMR, and uh, people have complained about the quality on that and gone to other modes. This is still, I think it's still an evolving technology, and I think DMR and the others, and I think this really opens the door at a good time. It's long overdue. The presentation that was made recently in California about this was not at a ham radio event. It was a presentation done at a acoustics and speech conference. And Ham from Australia, that would be David Rowe, VK5DGR, presented a paper describing the neural network and how it works. It's machine learning. Now, machine learning, when done right, is pretty powerful. Think about your own life for a moment, and think about all the devices in your life, from your digital toys to your automobile, really. A voice activation, the smart speaker in your home, the smartphones, of course. Anything. It just keeps getting better and better with its recognition abilities, with its responsiveness, everything that everything that makes it work. Well, here, not only will it make it work, it'll make it sound good, which is fabulous. And of course, our friends over at Amateur Radio Digital Communications are very, very big on the promise that this holds for voice, and they've been supporting the free DV project. So this is going to really help. This is going to be an amazing, what they call an evolution. Again, something sometimes you think about with living things, and it almost seems like a living thing, adapting for LAN mobile radio systems. I'm excited about this one, and I can't wait to see it ripen, see it blossom, and I hope to make use of it. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, the whole world is moving at such a fast rate. I mean, amateur radio 25 years ago, when I came into the hobby, it was nothing like it is today. All right, we still did Morse and SSB and FM, but think about it. The whole of digital voice on FM, digital voice on AM, sorry, HF, and digital, all this digital and software defined radios and all these things, it's moving on very quickly. And I think it's any way that can improve the voice quality. I mean, if you listen to an SSB signal these days, unless you've got a noise cancelling speaker or headset, there's a horrible lot of noise on one thing and another. If you can clean that up and you can make it really sound good, and you know, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, as soon as I saw free DV, it made me cast my mind back several years, because I had one QSO on the 40 meter band with a certain Ed Durant DD5 LP using the free DV mode, if that's the correct name for it. And it was quite a difficult contact. The audio kept on breaking up, not because propagation was terrible, although I seem to remember that propagation wasn't particularly good either. The thing that made it fall down was that there were adjacent SSB signals, and they were strong enough to disrupt the audio. So I must admit this news story is a little bit above my head, but if it's the same kind of thing but just being used at VHF and UHF, does that mean that somebody somewhere is going to have to bring out a handheld radio that has this on board, and it'll be another mode competing against DMR, D-Star, C4FM, M17, etc.? And secondly, would that same problem still hold true? So yes, you could have amazing audio quality, which would be very nice, but if there was also a weak FM signal on the same frequency or an immediately adjacent one, would that, in this context, also cause the audio to break up? So beyond that, Martin, I don't really know what to say, because this story is a little bit above my head, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no problems. Well, from what I can see, and it is from what I can see from this, if we're talking free DV, that's predominantly done on the HF bands. Now, there's probably no reason why it couldn't be done on higher frequencies, but free DV is, well, when I came across it, was on HF bands. And in fairness, your signal type problems are going to be the same whatever the mode is. But if you can clean the audio up and it sounds good, I'm all for it. And if you have a common one, if this could raise to the top of the pile, then why not? I think it's something that we need to keep an eye on. Why not? It's neural networks. After all, we had a lecture the other day on AI in amateur radio at the club. So it's all moving that way. So just an interesting one there. Right, move to our next news story. Edmund, I'm going to give you this one. A pirate radio broadcaster agrees to pay $7,200 payment. The FCC have fined him. Now, that doesn't seem a lot, but hey, at least he's being fined. What do you think?
Well, you know, sometimes if you glance at something, your brain momentarily sees what it expects to see rather than what's actually written there. Well, when I glanced at the headline, I saw the figures 7200. Now, I obviously don't live in the United States, but I watch social media enough to know that if you are in the United States and you tune your radio to that frequency, 7200, which in Europe would be right at the top of the 40-meter band, but in the US is not quite at the top. I believe that frequency is rather notorious, so I thought for a minute this chap had been either busted for transmitting on that frequency and saying rude words or making political speeches or playing music or the like. And then I realised it was actually the amount that he had been fined. This is a very interesting concept, because I'm pretty sure that if Ofcom busted me for doing something illegal, not that I am or would, of course, you understand, and I went back to them and said, I can't afford to pay that. I can only afford to pay roughly 1/6 of the amount. I doubt very much Ofcom would say, oh, okay then, you can just pay that instead, that's fine. Because I'm employed, I suspect that they would take me to court and slap an attachment of earnings order on my salary so that my employer would automatically deduct regular payments every month until the debt was paid off. So that was quite interesting from my point of view, that if the FCC finds you and you say, nah, can't afford that, you can negotiate something less. But the other thing is, the way it's worded, I'm not sure if this chap is going to pay $7,200 back in one go or in installments, because $7,200 does sound quite a lot of money to me. I know it's probably breakfast to rich people out there, but $7,200 is a lot. So even if he pays it in installments, it says he's made a commitment to make the voluntary contribution specified. So what happens if he doesn't? Or if he makes a few payments and then stops and turns around and pleads poverty due to a change in circumstances or something like that. But yeah, the moral of the story is don't broadcast illegally on the FM broadcast band and this won't happen to you. Back to you, Martin.
I think it's don't broadcast illegally anyway. But yeah, you're dead right. Yeah. Caryn, what's your thoughts on it? Because it is FCC and it is in your country.
Well, first, I just want to say my microphone was muted, and so you didn't hear me laughing. Edmund, I love, I love that you thought it was the notorious 7200, a frequency that shall live in infamy. No, this is not ham radio, but it's important because it is unlicensed operation, and the amount it's not going to buy real estate or very much of anything, but it is still a bite out of the budget. This is illegal broadcasting, which he admits to and agrees to the payment. And yes, it was negotiated after the FCC reviewed his finances because he made an argument he cannot afford much higher than that. The thing about the FCC is that in 2020, the Pirate Act was passed by Congress, and it gave, for lack of a better word, more teeth to enforcement. And fines can actually be imposed up to 2 million if need be. I'm sure this fellow in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, identified as Robert Bellinger, I don't know that he has $2 million laying around for his broadcasts on 93.1 FM. Why is this an important story? Well, because they're going to collect. He has agreed to collect. See, I cannot recall at Amateur Radio Newsline during my time there any stories that are about collecting money. We run an awful lot of stories saying the FCC is going to impose a fine, and some of these numbers, as many of you may know, are astronomical. They're big numbers, lots of zeros and commas in there. We never hear about them being collected. The FCC does not collect fines. The Treasury Department collects the fines, and we never hear about that. And if you ask, there's no information given out about, well, that story we ran 2 years ago with this imposed. Did they ever collect the fine? We don't hear about it. We just don't hear about it. So this is important in that they are collecting. They will collect. Gee, the government has just reopened, and this is a nice announcement to come out of a reopened government. And maybe if they start doing more collecting of these things successfully, maybe our United States budget will be a little healthier. That sure would be nice. I don't think it's going to solve other problems, but it will certainly put more money where it needs to go. Originally the agency proposed a $40,000 fine. Well, yeah, who has that laying around that they can just pay to the government for unlicensed broadcasting? $7,200, okay. Maybe he'll make payments. As you say, Edmund, we don't know how the payments will be structured, but because this was negotiated, agreed to in a consent decree, that they will get their money. How nice is that? The only thing I had to laugh, they're calling it a voluntary contribution. It does not seem terribly voluntary. I think the wording is sort of strange that way. He has to pay something. But the fact that he has agreed to the amount, I think they're kind of splitting hairs here by calling it voluntary. Nonetheless, back to my original point, we do not hear often about these payments being collected. So bravo, bravo, and let this be the first of many.
Yes, I mean the fact it uses the word voluntary, that almost makes it sound like this chap is carrying out an act of kindness by paying it back. And I almost, if he's been able to negotiate it down from 40,000 to just over 7,000, well, I've almost got visions of him going back to the FCC or the Treasury or whatever it is in a couple of days' time and saying, "Well, I've had a very unexpected, absolutely humongous turkey bill after Thanksgiving, and then Christmas is coming up, and times are hard and all that kind of thing. So, can I pay you back at $10 a month? I mean, why not?"
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. And if that happens, I sure hope we hear about it, because that would not be something they would look very kindly upon. I think you're right. It does leave that door open. So hopefully he'll find the money and make that payment.
Well, the easy way out of it was don't do illegal broadcasts, and licenses are available. You can apply for them. I know that you have to apply from quite a long way in advance for the FTC broadcast licenses, having talked to Frank about this, but they are available, and, you know, or you buy a station. Maybe one, and if you can't afford a lot of money, buy one that's going out of business. But I don't know. At least they say he's going to pay it back. Let's hope they do, Caryn, because maybe if enough of these pirates get caught, your tax bill might go down next year.
Now that would be a story. That would definitely be a good story.
I know, but I don't think it's going to happen. That I think the government will lose that very quickly. Oh dear, that's my personal opinion. Before the government wants to take me to task on it, I'm being flippant. Right, let's move to our next news story. There's an opinion here. FutureGEO is the most important amateur radio initiative of the decade. Why is nobody talking about it? Well, because we don't know about it. And what it's talking about is potentially putting a number of geostationary satellites up there for amateur use, a bit like the Q0100 satellite, but putting them up so they cover Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and the States, and let's cover the world with them. And if you did that, why would we need so many low Earth orbit ones? I don't know. But Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, I hadn't heard of it either. And as an aside, if you ever get the opportunity to have a QSO through Q0100, the geostationary satellite, well, actually, it's a transponder on the SHALSAT satellite at 26 degrees east. But if you ever get an opportunity, then do it. I had the privilege of doing that very thing from the National Ham Fest in 2025, where the Cam Hams had set up a satellite dish pointing in the correct direction. And it's one of those, you can know what something is and how it works in theory, on paper, in your head, but actually sitting down and driving the thing and doing it is quite another experience. So if you've never had a QSO through the satellite and somebody who's got a setup at their house invites you round to have a go, for example, then definitely say yes if you can, because it's a wonderful experience to have. The Q0100 transponder covers much of Europe, and Africa anyway, it just about makes it to the eastern coast of some parts of South America, but certainly not to the continental USA. So, yeah, I think more of these would be a good thing. Maybe not too many more, because you could then end up with a situation where if any given spot on the Earth you've got about 3 or 4 different geostationary satellites to choose from, that could then sort of spread the available number of people to talk to, if you see what I mean. But it would be really nice to have one maybe that sits mid-Atlantic, maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 20 and 30 degrees west, where the beam would then be wide enough to cover the continental USA, but also the UK and Europe. And even if we had more geostationary satellites than we knew what to do with, it wouldn't be that much of a detriment to the low Earth orbit satellites, I wouldn't have thought, for the simple reason that even the most expensive and elaborate setup for low Earth orbit satellites is probably still going to be cheaper than if you are buying all of the equipment, literally all of the equipment, to get active on QO100. And there's also the portable side of it as well. I know that in certain contests, people roving in the US is quite a big thing. But even if I was just going out to do parks on the air or summits on the air in the UK, if I was going to do satellite, I would much rather lug my elk log periodic antenna up to the top of the mountain and a couple of handhelds and a duplexer. I would much rather do that than have to lug all the equivalent equipment, a satellite dish, transverter, and all the other stuff you would need up to the top of a mountain. And even if it was already up there, aiming the dish at the satellite, given how narrow the bore sight is, that's not a sort of 2-minute setup job by any means. Whereas if you've got a arrow or elk antenna in your hand, you can just rock up somewhere, point it at more or less the vague right direction in the sky, and your aiming at the satellite doesn't have to be accurate down to like 1 degree or something like that. So, yeah, it would be good to have more geostationary ones, but I don't think that even lots of geostationary satellites would prove to be an existential threat to the low Earth orbit satellites. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, you make some interesting points there, and yeah, fine. Now, I was kind of half thinking, and maybe it's going to get done, I don't know, but wouldn't it be nice if they were all in a mesh network, these geostationaries, so you went up on one and came down on a number of them, or maybe a bit like some of the digital repeater modes where you dial which satellite you want to come out of. That would be quite an interesting way of doing it. But maybe I'm jumping ahead and maybe my brain's racing too fast. Caryn, I know you don't do satellites, but this got to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I like your brain racing ahead to the mesh network. That's certainly a nice prospect for satellite ops. I should mention that this story appeared on Amateur Radio Daily, and it is something being discussed by Cale Muth, K4HCK. It's certainly provocative, and I think well, here in North America, we don't have the QO100 satellite. I don't know if we did have it, if I would be so inclined. I'm not really much interested in satellite operating, although I've listened to the ISS a few times, enjoyed trying to chase that. What is very attractive about this is this apparently is accessible. The hardware is really, really accessible. What Cal has suggested in his opinion piece is that it opens up every existing mode in amateur radio. That would be both digital and analog, and would be amazingly accessible to people at a very low cost, pretty much the cost of an entry level HF rig is what he, although that price is going up too these days. So what do you consider entry level these days? But if people want to build their own components, they can do that too. It's an awfully nice thing to think about, putting this sort of communication in the hands of more people. Martin, though, I'm sort of interested now when you mention the mesh network. I mean, this is a pipe dream right now, certainly, but it's a nice way to keep thinking. I mean, if we don't think and dream, we never get anywhere. And what is amateur radio if not the pursuit of dreams? Back to you.
Yeah, well, the mesh network was an idea. I'm not trying to copyright it, guys. And I'm not trying to give you lots of extra work. Just a thought that it'd be nice to do that, to mesh these satellites, a bit like we do with the digital modes in VHF, UHF on the ground with repeaters. So just a thought. And yeah, as I say, what you're saying is, this is another one of those stories where we're moving forward. Amateur radio doesn't stand still. If it stood still, we'd still be operating spark gap transmitters and on about 3 bands, and that would be about it, and we wouldn't do any of the nice things we do now. So, yes, it's important to move forward. Right. Now, the next news story, the Yasme grant supports HAM's initiative in Bangladesh universities. Now, I've often said there's a lovely lady that works about half a mile down the road from me in a cafe. She's from Bangladesh, and she's great fun, and I enjoy seeing her when we go in there occasionally for breakfast. But that's nothing to do with this news story. Bangladesh, they're doing a lot of work there for amateur radio and universities. Caryn, do you want to go first on this one?
Sure thing, Martin. I love the fact that the Yasme Foundation, which is in California, which is pretty far from Bangladesh in miles and in development, really is reaching out to the efforts of the Amateur Radio Association of Bangladesh. They are committed. They are committed to bringing ham radio to the next generation. We talk so much about that here on the podcast. What will happen with the next generation? What will ham radio be like for them? What modes will they use? What equipment will they use? Will it stay vibrant? And what the hams in this association are doing is they're taking a tour of 24 university campuses around Bangladesh, and they are exposing them to everything about ham radio, from the science and the theory of propagation and solar weather to the thing we were just talking about a few moments ago, satellite communication. They're giving them an opportunity to experience satellite communication. They are working in some cases where the schools have a robotics club or a branch of the IEEE. They are coordinating with them. So they do have, in some ways, a captive audience. These are students who already are inclined toward this kind of pursuit, may not necessarily be ham radio operators, but they're jumping into the pool with them and splashing around in the water and really getting them on board with these experiences. You never know, just like when we have, on a small scale, on our field day operations, we have the Get on the Air station. You never know in a few moments with somebody with a microphone in their hand, whether that will set something in motion in their mind and get them a little more interested. You can't know from what seem like meaningless casual contacts, what impact that can have on somebody's life. So something like this, where hams have an organized campaign of going around the country and touring and presenting, even at a liberal arts school. They were at one of the schools was a liberal arts school, but they're jumping in and not just going for the STEM people, they're going for everybody. And that is fabulous. Yasme Foundation recognizes the importance of something like this, especially because this brings ham radio to younger people and in developing nations too. So not exactly controversial. I would say totally on board. This is the way to go if you want to keep the spirit of ham radio alive, particularly in that part of the world. So good going for them. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's good going for them. And in many ways, and let's be honest, when you sit down with somebody, if you've got a presenter that's very passionate about what they're doing, it doesn't have to be amateur radio, but amateur radio we're interested in at the moment. But if you're passionate about it and you show people, there will be some that will take away, I want to get involved with this. Or they might think, well, actually, it could be a stepping stone to me learning to do something else. Or even if they walk away with no interest in what we're doing, at least they know we exist. And if anybody asks them, they can tell them. So, I think it's good getting it into education. We've talked about STEM many times, but, there's so much I've learnt through amateur radio. And I'm being honest about it. I often say I wasn't interested in history when I was at school. Not at all. I couldn't have cared how many wives King Henry VIII had. But there are now things that we do in special events that I've learnt through history. And, and other things go on around the world. So it's got to be a good thing. Edmund, have I left you anything to say on this?
Well, I can't really think of anything to add, Martin, other than that we ignore universities and other educational establishments at our peril, because although I think it's quite fashionable to think that young people, that large homogenous group, young people, whoever they are, young people aren't interested in amateur radio, I don't think that's the case. I think there's perhaps more interest from young people than certain amateurs would give credit for or believe. But other than that, Martin, no, you and Caryn, between you, have covered it. I can add nothing extra.
Oh, well, sorry about that. But equally, as we've said, getting into universities, getting into education, showing people is a very, very, very good thing. Right, we come to our last news story, and we got through them quicker today because there are only three of us, but hopefully we brought you some interesting bits and pieces. I'm going to let Caryn go first on this one again because I know you like this one, Caryn. Santa's Net returns for its 20th consecutive year. Bit of fun at the end of our news stories, but this one's a good one. Over to you, Caryn.
Thank you. Absolutely. Who doesn't? Well, I was going to say who doesn't love Santa, but we know who doesn't love Santa. That's another story altogether. And his name is Krampus. But SantaNet, 20 years of the SantaNet. This is pretty remarkable. I should explain, first of all, that the SantaNet, which will be underway by the time this podcast is released, SantaNet is kicking off on the 28th. So that's the day after what is Thanksgiving here in the United States. And that will continue through the 23rd of December. All volunteers, people giving up their evenings to get on the air and call CQ as Santa for kids. And, we just finished talking about Bangladesh and how university students are being exposed to the different things that amateur radio can do. And this is a much simpler and holiday themed way of giving access to young people to amateur radio. Very, very different, non-academic form of exposure. It's more experiential. It's more focused on the thrill and the magic of both the holiday season and the magic of radio together, which I think is pretty powerful and very, very upbeat. So on 3.916 megahertz, the 3916 nets are hosting the SantaNet with its network of volunteers who are getting on relay stations to make sure that kids do get a chance to talk to Santa. And on their website, which I hope we can put in the show notes, there's an opportunity to check in, read about the SantaNet. You can check in beforehand. A local time, I believe it starts at 7 p.m., if I'm not mistaken. And fellow at the helm of this is Pete Thompson, who's doing an amazing job every year. That's KE5GGY. You know, Martin, 20th year, you know what this tells me? That some of the kids checking in to the SantaNet are the kids of hams who checked in 20 years ago as kids. So we're into the second generation, which is so lovely. And I think that's another reason I really like this story, because it's continuity, creating new hams, creating holiday joy, just having a little fun. Hey, we do it for all those reasons ourselves when we get on the air. We want to have fun. And yes, we want to do community service, but this is a great, great tradition and a perfect kickoff, in my opinion, to the holiday season. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, it sounds fun. Now, there's just one thing I see and worried me just a little bit. Edmund, we're in region IRU region 1. We have 80 meters only goes up to 3.8 megs. Are they likely to split? I know we can listen up at 3.916, but we can't transmit there, can we?
No, but there's a possibility in the UK and Europe of actually hearing this net, because in the UK and Europe, 3,900 kilohertz to 4,000 kilohertz is the 75 meter broadcast band. However, virtually all of the AM broadcast stations that I have ever heard tend to be in the top 50 kilohertz of that. It is very unusual for me to hear anything in the bottom half of the band, and particularly in the bottom 20 kilohertz. The only broadcast signals that I've heard down the bottom end of that frequency range have been very weak, and I suspect, can't prove it, but I suspect may have been pirate broadcasters. So if you're one of those and the FCC knocks on your door, tell them that you've blown all your life savings on turkey for Thanksgiving and that you can only afford to pay your $7,200 fine at the rate of $10 a month or something like that. So the frequency that this net is on stands a good chance of being clear in Europe. Hopefully propagation will be on your side if you do try to listen. But as Martin has said quite correctly, unless we can twist anybody's arm and get them to operate split, so transmitting somewhere below 3,800, we won't legally anyway be able to work this station, which is a shame. But if it started in America and is aimed at American operators, then that's absolutely fair enough. You know, their party, their rules, their frequency. If it's an American thing, then I suppose if we're outside of America, we can't really complain too much about the frequency that they're using. But I hope the DX is on their side and that Santa will make lots and lots of QSOs. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And what I do think about this news story is it's fun. Amateur radio should be fun. Yes, it's educational, but it is also a hobby and it should be fun. And this is doing something for fun. So I'll give them, 10 out of 10 for doing this. And I wish you every success, guys. Right, so that completes the news stories. Let's find out what the three of us have been up to since the last time we did this podcast. We always go ladies first. So, Caryn, you're back in the chair again. What do you think?
Well, I think propagation has been really kind to me lately. I have been back out doing POTA a little more actively, had wonderful, wonderful activations, really been enjoying the DX again. And at least for right now, my new best friend is 15 meters because not only am I getting the DX over the pond, but I'm getting out to the west here in the US. And from New York, that's pretty good getting over land and going the distance and hearing those number 7 calls and finding out when I map it that it is indeed a number 7 call in that part of the US. So it's been a thrill. The thrill is back. The thrill is back for me. And of course, some old friends who can hear me again with a good propagation have been getting in my log, and it's just really been a joy. Of course, now the colder weather is here, so we may be opting for what we call plota. I know Ed and I call it plota, parking lots on the air, but it's still in the park. And bring along a blanket and just tough it out because it's well worth it. Connected to that, I must tell you too, you're going to get sick of me saying this, but I have, every time I go out and operate, I fall in love with the KX2 all over again. It is little but powerful. I guess kind of like some of the satellites we talk about. You don't expect something that tiny with, look, the 10 watts really isn't that low power compared to what it could be, but it travels and it's just a joy to operate. So no buyer's remorse on the KX2. The 891 is still going out with me. Don't, I didn't put it in the closet, but when I want to grab and go, I'm enjoying the KX2 and really appreciating its capabilities more and more. And then finally, and I'm not going to linger on this because you have a whole segment about it, but I just, as a lead into that, just want to say much of my time has been devoted to working with a really terrific group of people who next week, right before St. Nicholas Day on the 6th of December, we'll be doing a 48-hour special event station, a kilo to kilo, for Krampus Nacht. And just quick explanation, this is the folkloric figure who in some parts of Europe and now in some parts of the United States terrorizes people who've been naughty. So I ask the listeners, search your hearts and look at your own behavior. And if you've been naughty, watch out. But whether you've been naughty or nice, please come and hunt us on HF and on DMR, on D-Star, and on Fusion, since Martin and Colin have graciously given us use of the ICQ podcast channels for those 2 days. So that's been the excitement here. And we'll turn it back to you, Martin. We'll see what Edmund's been up to.
Yeah. Well, as I say, that'll be an interesting one. And I hope that there will be ICQ listeners on to talk to you for your event on the talk group. But you won't possibly be using it 100% of the time. So the talk group's never that mega busy. So you guys running the event on it should hopefully get some more people on, which is a good one. Edmund, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke?
Well, the second full week in November is the Essex CW Club's activity week. It's not a contest, but the idea is if you manage 25 CWQSOs or more, then you can get a freebie commemorative certificate. It's the number of QSOs rather than the number of different people that you work that counts, and they do encourage you to have more than a basic 599 thank you 73 type exchange, although those are acceptable. So I had a go and I ended up with 12 QSOs, so nowhere near the 25. The main reason for that is, if I'm being brutally honest, my CW is extremely ropey. I can send far better than I receive. Something that didn't help, though, was that towards the beginning of the week there was a major solar storm which played havoc with 40 metres for quite a while, or it seemed that way anyway. So most of my first QSOs were with stations that weren't even remotely local. They all seemed to be in southern or southeastern Europe, and those were sort of contest style exchanges. But the flip side of that is that I worked several special event stations, which I wouldn't have done otherwise. So you never know, I might get some nice QSL cards through the Bureau from them as the months go by. Immediately after that finished, Sunday the 16th of November was the latest edition of 433 Alive, which is designed to encourage simplex FM activity on the 70 centimetre band, just for the fun of it. So I walked up to the top of Sisbury Ring near Worthing, which isn't actually a SOTA summit, although it's high enough to be one. It's just not classified as one because I forget the exact wording of it, but there are other peaks or high ground close enough nearby that it doesn't stick out on its own. Is prominence the word I'm thinking of? So it's not a SOTA summit, but in height terms it could be. And I worked 9 stations from there altogether, which I know isn't a lot, but I spoke to a couple of people who I haven't spoken to for years and years and years, which is always nice. But it was interesting from a propagation point of view. I took my little 70 centimetre Yagi with me, which is just the driven element with the reflector behind it and 2 directors in front of it. So not a large antenna, and I would have expected to be able to move it quite a lot from side to side without it having a major impact on signal strength. If you have a really, really long Yagi with many dozens of elements on it, because that's then got a huge amount of gain, it narrows the bore sight, if that's the right word. So you have to aim it a lot more accurately than if the antenna's a lot smaller. Well, there were a couple of stations that I worked who weren't that far away in the grand scheme of things, where the signal would go from barely being there at all right up to S9 and then back down to being barely there at all, just with me moving the antenna only a very small distance from side to side. So, like I say, if I'd been using a really massive long antenna with, 32 elements on it, that might not have been that surprising. But to get that effect with an antenna as small as the one I was using, that surprised me, and I still haven't quite worked out why that happened. The other thing of interest was that, as I said, all the stations I worked were either to the west or to the east of me, but for a couple of them, I got the strongest signal of all by turning my antenna to the north. And to the north, there was only hills, the South Downs and the North Downs. There wasn't like a massive, great glass-covered building to the north that might be reflecting or refracting the signals. So that was a bit of a mystery as well. And everybody was using vertical polarization as far as I know. So I know you can sometimes, if you're cross polarized with the station you're working, I know you can sometimes get a stronger signal by beaming away from them and then receiving the reflection, and the reflection then kind of twists the polarity of the signal. But as I say, as far as I know, everybody was vertically polarized, so that kind of rules out that explanation as well. So it was a fun activity. I got rather cold, I must admit, and I didn't work that many people, but given the time of year, that's not surprising. But from the propagation point of view, it's actually quite interesting and gave me a bit to think about. And last but not least, a couple of years back, I won a Zygu, however you pronounce it, X6100 on eBay that was nearly new for a very good price, and intended to use it a lot, take it out and about portable, do great things with it. And as ever, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So it's been sitting in its box for way longer than it should have been. And I don't know what suddenly made me think of it, but the 6100 has an internal battery. And for some reason, the idea suddenly crossed my mind. This thing has been sitting in a box. Has the battery discharged? And if it has it discharged down far lower than it should have done? In which case, will I have inadvertently damaged the thing? So I got it out of the box and found, to my surprise, that even though the battery wasn't still fully charged, it was still pretty well fully charged. So that would seem to suggest that if you've got a 6100, there isn't much, if any, of a quiescent current draw that will drain your battery down. But then I started pressing the buttons and fiddling with things and not reading the manual. In the best traditions of amateur radio, we never read the manual, of course. And I then realised that the software on it was out of date. It wasn't the latest version. It wasn't even the version before that. It was a couple of versions back. Now, I'm not massively computer literate. I've only ever used Windows computers, and the 6100 is basically a Linux computer disguised as a radio. So to update the software, you have to get an SD card, and then you have to use a program that I've never used before to write the firmware update onto the card in the way that Linux will understand. And I'm probably not explaining this very well, but anyway, I thought, in a moment of madness, I thought, well, let's try it. What's the worst that can happen? And nothing went wrong. I followed the instructions on a YouTube video. Everything happened as the video suggested it would, and I upgraded the firmware to the latest version. And I was very pleased with myself. So I then did some more reading around and found out that there is software written by, I think it's a guy in Russia, Romeo 1 Charlie Bravo Uniform or something along those lines. Apologies if I've got the call sign wrong. And you can actually download that to the SD card, stick it in your 6100 and leave it there. And then every time you boot up the radio, it will run this alternative firmware instead. So amazements of amazements, bearing in mind my computer illiteracy, I had a go at doing that, and that worked perfectly as well. So let that be an encouragement to anybody listening who thinks that they're no good with computers. If I can do this, then there is hope for absolutely everybody. So I have been experimenting on the 40 meter band with 10 watts from the Zygu 6100, which is what you can get out of it if you connect an external battery. But the R1 CBU firmware even has a facility in it to transmit and receive FT8 and FT4 from within the radio without you needing to even connect a computer at all. So, if anybody has seen the call sign Mike 0 Mike November Golf on 40 meters FT8, it's not a pirate, it's not an illusion. I genuinely managed it using just the radio and no computer at all. And after the excitement of that, I'm now going to have a bit of a rest and probably do practically no amateur radio at all until 2026, with the exception of trying to work the Krampus special event station on the ICQ podcast talk group. So yeah, mega excitement by my standards. Martin, what do you think about that? FT8 on 40 meters. What is to become of me?
Well, you've been a very good, busy person, Edmund, and you've done a lot more than me. I didn't get out for 77s on the air. I will say, what have I been up to? Well, there are things that go on in the background. I was trying to test a piece of software, spent far too long on it. It's a piece of amateur radio software. I'm not going to mention it because it's unfair. The fact I can't get it to work is unfair. It's probably something I'm doing. And I've had some other things going on. So I've been very, very busy. But amateur radio-wise, I've tried to do some things. My QMX Plus is still giving me lots of enjoyment, just fiddling with it. And I looked at it the other day and I thought, do you know what? I've got a BHI speaker on there. Lovely BHI speaker, but it costs as much as the radio. So I thought, I've got to do something. So I had a look round, had an old loudspeaker in the box, and thought, well, that's good. And I thought, well, I ought to try and make it amplified. So went on the interweb, found some LM386 boards, bought 5 of them for just over £6. They're literally nothing, but little audio amplifiers, and you have audio in, power in, audio in, and speaker out. So I took one of these little boards that's really, really small and fitted it inside the loudspeaker enclosure and plugged that into my QMX Plus. And initial results are it's working very, very well. Now, at the moment, I haven't transmitted. Sometimes you get RF pickup on devices. I'm hoping I don't get any RF pickup on this, but certainly I've used it for a couple of days now, just listening on HF while I was doing other things in the shack, just listening, and it's working very, very well. So for an old speaker I had kicking around and few bits and pieces, I think it cost me under £2 to get this working with some connectors and bits and pieces to make a standalone speaker into a powered speaker. Have been on 2 meters and 77s, not as much as I'd like to on the talk group, but I have been around, spoke to a few people. Did go to an auction house the other day. That's another job with Carol and I are trying to get rid of stuff. Just get rid of stuff we've had kicking around for a long time. I don't think it's worth very much, but I didn't take any amateur radio stuff. That was for certain. But just general knickknacks which we've had kicking around. Some of them are gone, some of them haven't. Did manage to get down to see Yaseu UK. Got an invite down to Yaseu UK, down at their new building. They've been there 2 years, and I managed to go down and see them, which was great. And the feature was 2 features for this episode. One is my talk with Yaseu, and I talked with Dean at Yaseu on some of the other stuff they do apart from amateur radio. Mind you, we did cross into amateur radio a little bit as well. And then I also had a lovely chat with Caryn and Mike with the Krampus night event that you're running, Caryn. So that was good fun. So the 2 of those should go out as the feature for this episode. And lastly, I've been doing a bit of computer networking around the house, getting things working properly again. Every now and again, I get a funny go off and So I've been doing little bits and pieces, all keeping me very, very busy, but not necessarily a tremendous amount of amateur radio to show for it. Still, never mind. We all have fun. So that was a good one. Right, all that's left for me to do now is to thank the guys for turning up, and we'll move to the next part of the podcast. So I'd like to thank Caryn Eve Murray, KD2GUT.
Thank you, Martin. Always fun.
Yeah, great to have you as always. And Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG.
Thanks for having me on, Martin.
Yeah, no problems at all, Edmund, and we'll keep in touch. I'm sure I'll see you before Christmas because I'm going down to see my other son, Lee, who lives not far from you, in the next couple of weeks. So we'll pop round and see you as well. So all that's left me to do is move on to the next part of the podcast and say 73 to you guys. 73.
73.
7-3.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now it's time to have a look at the news in brief for me, Colin M6BRY. Just a couple of news stories this week. Not much going on actually, away from the main stories. But if we start with the RSGB is looking for a proactive and knowledgeable volunteer to serve as its new accessibility champion. The important role will focus on ensuring that people with disabilities can fully participate and enjoy everything that amateur radio has to offer. Key responsibility of the role will be engaging with the radio community, serving as a point of contact and signposting people to resources that can help them, as well as raising awareness to the challenges faced by individuals and sharing inspiring stories. So if you think you could be the person for this role, you need to contact the RSGB board director, Nathan Nuttall, from the RSGB's website. So say if you think you can help out on that one, give them a shout from there. Just a piece of information we were shared on x.com by a follower there whose handle is aka Ham Radio, and he says that to basically broadcast the fact that Ofcom have been sending out warning emails to full license holders whose call signs have been detected on FT8 transmissions outside the authorized frequency allocation in the 5 MHz band. And the email basically states that, as I say, they've detected this case and they give a frequency and a time. And Ofcom are then suggesting you check the configuration of the FT8 software to ensure it limits your transmissions to frequencies within the allocation, and sort of go from there. So yeah, so basically it's a Ofcom are, warning amateurs that might have slipped outside the band to check, their software to make sure that it meets, all relevant local regulations. Right, we now head over to a double features episode, which is promoting the Krampus event and also the visit to Yaseu UK about their radios. So as always, hope you enjoy.
And now for this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
Well, hi guys. I got an interesting conversation with Caryn, KD2GUT, our Caryn, who's with us often, and she's brought along her friend Mike, N2PPI. Now, Christmas time, lots of interesting things happen, and around the world there are different things going on, and Caryn and Mike have been educating me on this. Now, what I'm going to say is, don't switch off, don't go politically correct on us. This is an educational thing. This is something that other parts of the world do, and it's quite interesting. And it's all about good children and bad children. Isn't it, Caryn?
Oh, yes. It's all about good children and bad children. And we hope all the hams who contact us during this special event will have been good children all year. But even if they haven't, we welcome the contacts. You're going to meet a very unusual character. You're going to meet Krampus. That's Krampus. Krampus. And he has roots in Europe. And I'll have to say, we're very privileged among our 9 operators to have one operator, Mike, N2PPI, who has personally experienced
as a young child.
in his childhood. Mike, how do you feel now that the Krampus, who shall we say, terrorized your childhood, you have a chance to get back to him by calling CQ Krampus, CQ Krampus.
Yes, looking forward to that. It's my chance of getting back at the Krampus. Well, when I was a young child, yes, we were terrorized. If you were a bad kid, you were terrorized by this character. Now, this is, if you're not familiar with Krampus, Krampus is like a longhorned looking like ram monster that used to come around during the Christmas holidays with Saint Nick. And if you were not a good kid, oh boy, he would scare the heck out of you and tell you that he was going to take you away and all this other things. So it was really crazy. I have a funny story if you'd like me to share it with you guys.
Go
I'll
for
be
it.
more than happy. So when I was a young child, yeah, of course, I have a younger brother, and you know how boys are. We fight, and you know how siblings do that. So we were always told if you're not good, you're not going to get any presents from Santa and Saint Nick and all this other stuff. So what ended up happening was Krampus would come around, and when he came around, they kept telling us this Krampus was going to come around, and it was a monster, and it was going to take us and everything else because we're bad. And what ended up happening was, you say, yeah, okay, okay. Well, one day, Krampus came, and all you heard was outside the door was a rattling chain and a like bags of rocks rattling, and it was kind of scary as a young child when they opened the door and this big-headed ram-looking monster was there. And I'm gonna tell you, you want to talk about being scared as a kid? My cousin wet himself. So that's how crazy that was. So I remember it vividly. And throughout Europe, this is like a tradition now, festival type of thing. But they used to actually come to the houses. They would organize it. The parents would organize it to come to the house. So it was a funny thing. I'm sure they got a good kick out of it. but now it's my turn to get back at by calling CQ and having this special event. So this is going to be really cool. When Caryn brought this to my attention that she wanted to do this, and knowing what my background is, I was like, wow, I didn't even know you knew about this. That's great. So it brings back a lot of childhood memories.
Yeah, well, in fairness, Mike, this is one of the traditions that's happened throughout the years. Now, we seem to have dumbed everything down these days. And nowadays, you're either on the naughty list or the good list. Well, so what? But in fairness, this sounds really interesting. And years ago, I remember being told about monsters under the bed and all those sort of things. Our parents used to sort of, I just suppose, have a bit of fun with us. And this is a good tradition, as you say. If you're a good child, St. Nicholas is going to bring you presents. If you're a bad child, beware. So,
Oh
Yeah,
yes, and if you're QRMing someone or stealing their frequency, beware.
beware.
Krampus is a good ham. We're gonna be doing our activation on CW and sideband, so we want people to feel free to talk to us, to communicate with us, to ask questions about this tradition. What's really neat about it is, even though it remains popular in Europe to the extent where people take great pains to construct these elaborate masks and these outfits made of fur, anything to look really menacing, and it's all in good fun, although some people do get carried away. It has carried over to the United States in recent years, and there are big Krampus festivals and parades in places like Milwaukee and Rhode Island, Seattle. Pennsylvania is very big with it, and they have a large German population there. So, in the spirit of things, our operators have decided, just for fun, we're all going to be taking Krampus names, and you, of course, will know our real names but I'm going to be Necht Ruprecht, which is an alias that Krampus uses sometimes. Mike, you're going to be Kramper. Yes. Michelle is going to be, I hope I'm saying this right, Perkta. Junie is going to be Strobart. And of course, Ed, who created our beautiful short video on the top of our QRZ page, he will be Belsnickel. Again, all of these are legitimate aliases for Krampus, who has different interpretations from country to country. You know, in the U.S., it's certainly a little milder celebration. People are known to take selfies with Krampus when the event happens. I don't know that I would go that far. I don't know that I want to put that up on my Facebook page, a picture of me with a guy with a goat face and big horns. But
I kind of like it. I kinda,
you'd have to say, Krampus on the left and me, just so you know. But we're really pleased that, my goodness, I had no trouble asking and getting a big yes from you, Mike, certainly, and everybody else, because it's like Halloween for Christmas,
right.
really.
Yeah, I think you're going to enjoy yourself now. What I got to have to ask you, Caryn,
Yeah.
is did Dan put me on the naughty list because I don't do Morse?
Why don't you work us and find out? Well, why don't you work us and we will tell you? And if there comes a knock on your door, I would suggest you look out the window first before you
If you
open
hear
the
the
door.
chains, if you hear the chains and
Mhm.
the rattling chains and the rocks and the bags.
I hope your house has a exit out the back. We will be on the air. I'll give the dates in UTC because it's going to vary from listener to listener. December 4th at 0 hours UTC to December 5th at 23:59 UTC. So that will be the extent of it, because St. Nicholas, the Feast of St. Nicholas, is December 6th. And traditionally, Krampus and his minions show up a day or so beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. And as I say, there are some interesting sort of things like this that go on, and I've heard Caryn was telling me if somebody thought, oh, this person, it's devil worship and one thing or another. No, it's history. It's something that has gone on for a long time. How would you get your I
Yeah.
mean, in the days of big families, how would you keep all your children under control? If you don't tell them this sort of thing, you wouldn't have done.
That's right. Yeah, we got the boogeyman under the bed, we got the monster in the closet, and now we have the Christmas monster. Yeah, and it's interesting. Just today, I was, for lack of a better word, doom scrolling on my Instagram feed, and quite by accident, a Japanese comedian was in one of the feeds that I got, and he was talking about children behaving at Christmas time. Well, wouldn't you know it? There's a Krampus in one section of Japan, and he showed pictures of it. He looks an awful lot like Krampus, and the name is Namahagi, and wears the big mask and the whole thing. So this is a universal experience. This is a universal experience wherever you go.
Right. It's becoming worldwide type of thing. And like I was telling you guys in the break, it's equivalent to almost like Oktoberfest if you really think about it. We had Oktoberfest was in Munich and in Bavaria, parts of Bavaria with all the beer festivals. Now to come to the United States, every bar and sometimes feasts and festivals of Oktoberfest in America. So you see how things can definitely spread over.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, let's be honest about it, in the UK, going back a good few years, we never did much on Halloween. Nobody ever bothered in Halloween. So Halloween made it across the pond this way, but equally, I think it's a sharing, and the world's got much, much smaller and we're able to share these things now and all have a bit of fun. And
It's fun.
yeah, I think that's what the thing's all about. And
Yes, amateur radio is cross cultural. It's the greatest way to share one another's culture. Definitely to have fun. I know a number of YLs in India who have said to me, "Yeah, Halloween. The kids are really getting into Halloween in India." So this is how we share as hams. It's just for fun. Colin CQ Krampus is K2K, and I bet we're going to hear some stories.
Oh, I'm sure. Greatest hobby in the world.
yeah, I think you're going to enjoy yourself. I take it you're operating the full 24 hours and not having a break. You got operators on all the whole time, Caryn?
We will try as best as we can to have operators on during what would be daytime for some folks and evening for others. I think most of the operators we have are working people, but those who are not will try to be on during the day, and then evenings we definitely will, and we will be spotting on the clusters for sure. So looking on the clusters for K2K, CQ Krampus. You will find us there, and it will be again CW and sideband, and we're happy to work as many people as we can, and we encourage people to work as many. Gee, what I call Mike? Would I say Krampuses or Crampi? How many of us?
That's a good question. I don't know.
The plural of Krampus
Crump
will
is
work.
crump is plural.
The plural. Work us in the plural.
Well, just a thought, Caryn. And I'll bring Mike in a second on this one because Mike probably doesn't know about this. But just as a thought, the ICQ Podcast Digital Talk Group's available. If you wanted to use it, I'm sure people, I'm probably giving you an extra thing to do, but with a DMR handheld and a hotspot, you're worldwide.
Ah, we are on DMR.
Yes, we are.
Mike, let's talk about this. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That would be really super if we have another mode that we could use. Maybe the ICQ podcast talk group. Martin, would you give the channel for the listeners?
Yeah, but the easiest way is to go to the ICQ Podcast website, go across the top menu, and select the digital group. But if you're on Brandmeister, it's Talk Group 9480. Fusion, it's 09480. D-Star, it's XLX 948. And you can do it with P25 and NSDN, and I believe also M17. So whichever digital mode you go, have a quick look on the ICQ Podcast website. And I know this is a buzz for a bit of a plug for us, but it's there to be used. And if Caryn and the guys want to use it for Krampus, I'm more than happy.
I think that is great. That's very generous. And I am, based on what you've just said, I think I will be able to monitor and call CQ during the day on DMR, but definitely I will be on HF in the evenings. And when I say daytime and evenings, I mean here in New York, local time, because sometimes during the day I'm a bit on the move. So having my DMR HT is a lot easier than sitting in the shack. So let's definitely consider that. This is a wonderful spur of the moment addition to our operating plan, and I'll let the other ops know if so many of them do have DMR. We can program that in. Thank you for that, Martin. We're looking forward to even more people chasing the Krampus. Nice to have people chasing the Krampus rather than the other way around.
The crop is chasing them. That's for
You
sure.
got that right. Yeah. Oh my God.
I would definitely like to encourage your listeners to do some research on it. Yeah, I think you'll be pretty amazed. Google it, AI it. what it's all about, and you'll see some really interesting pictures of the festivals and from each of the different countries in Europe that traditionally do this. I think you'd be pretty amazed.
Yeah, certainly. Now, I told a story before we started, and I'll tell it quickly. Back in the 1980s, our family, Colin and his brother Lee, and my daughter Wendy and Carol, and we used to go over to Holland every December to a big international judo match run by a Dutch judo team. And it was great fun. There were groups from all over Europe. And the highlight of the end of the event was St. Nicholas turned up to see everybody. And please don't take this the wrong way. I'm explaining exactly what happened. This was 1980. I am not a racist. But St. Nicholas had a helper called Black Pete. And a guy used to obviously put the black makeup on and can't work around with him. But may not happen anymore because we've gone politically correct. But there's a lot of these things happen around Europe or around the world that I think it's education, and we're finding out so much more by, Caryn and Nick, Mike putting this event on. We find out so much more, not only radio, but more about what goes on in life.
I agree.
I think so. And I think, as you said at the beginning of our discussion, Martin, kids will always need to be disciplined. That's just the way it is. And, this is sort of a creative way that has its roots in folklore. My goodness, going back to the 3rd century and really goes back pretty far. I think it's the 3rd century. Krampus is very, very old, so clearly misbehaving children are not a new phenomenon. We did not invent it in the 20th or 21st century. And I think this is just a lovely way to welcome in a beautiful season. We await the feast of Saint Nicholas, either in a secular or some people in a religious way. It doesn't matter to those of us who are just enjoying the beauty of the season. But this, shall we say, Christmas version of Halloween is a nice reminder that you don't get the candy without doing the work. And so, and it's a bit, as we say, it is a bit of fun. And I just can't wait. I know I will be very depressed when the event is over because we've just really been looking forward to it, but there's always next year.
Oh, certainly. Now, as I come to close up, in fairness, there's some great QRZ pages to look at. I'll let you guys tell people. The event runs between December the 4th at 0000 to December 5th, 2359. I don't know if you've got a website, you can tell us that and promote the QRZ page, guys.
Okay, well, thank you. Yes, we did not, for the 2-day event, did not do a web page. We did include toward the bottom of the page a link to some reading that the Smithsonian website has on some of the more historical facts about the Krampus. There are an awful lot of wonderful books about the Krampus, and I've been in preparation for this event have been reading a book called Krampus and the Old Dark Christmas. And this basically is research that a fellow did. It's a rather scholarly book, written in a very entertaining fashion, though. I mean, the guy actually allowed himself to be victimized by the Krampus a few times. He did sacrifice for his art. And it's just something that's fun.
Is it any different than the Christmas Grinch? The story of the Grinch,
That's
right?
right.
It's sort
Yes,
of like
that's
a story
right.
of the Grinch, that type of thing. It's been going back for so many years. And you know what? Being like politically correct, and like you said, it's like, look at years ago. If you were bad as a child, you didn't just get yelled at. You get a little
No.
shot on the bum or something, So,
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
and I know definitely, like, I don't know how it was so much in Europe, but I guess a lot in the United States, they would have the good old switch. If you guys know what the switch
Mhm.
is, where you just
Mhm.
they would tell you to go outside and get a little twig off a tree, and you get a little whipping with it. So
Mhm.
Krampus used to do that too. He used to have the stick, and he would whip you. But in the festivals, they kind of like run around with the stick and they just tap you. It's sort of like they tap you. They don't really hurt you.
It's
They
a
just
lot of
tap you.
noise. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
it's
lot of
yeah,
noise and fuss
yeah,
and everything else. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Exactly. I hadn't thought about the Grinch. Yeah.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to, go to our website, the K2K website, find out more about it, and definitely do some research on it. It's a really interesting topic. You'll really get to find out a lot of the folklore that's involved in it, and just the photos themselves, the photos and little videos. I think you'll get a good kick out of it. So I'm kind of really happy we're doing this event. It's like first time I've ever heard of having the special event, especially since I come from that area. It's a little special to me, and being that I experienced some of this, so I'm really looking. I think it should be. I think it should be great, and I feel honored that you asked me, and I appreciate that.
I'm so happy. We have, by the way, a downloadable certificate. I do want to mention this year we don't have QSL cards, but we have a downloadable certificate. And when you visit our QRZ page, please look at the bottom. You will see the certificate, and that's a very special certificate. My husband is not a ham radio operator. I owe him a lot because he puts up with a lot because I am a ham radio operator, and he knows when I go out the door to operate POTA, out of my way, I'm going to operate POTA. And when I'm on the air, I'm on the air. And he's been wonderful about it. So he is a graphic designer. And I said to him, I need something, please, for our certificate. And Rod's background is German American. So he was so on board for this, so on board. So please, on the QRZ page, look at the artwork and know that that will be your certificate. You will be notified when you've made a contact that is successful. You will be sent an email and you can download the certificate with the details of your QSO.
So, in fairness, and I've learnt quite a bit tonight. I had some fun, which is what amateur
Mhm.
radio should be. I've learned.
Mhm.
I'd like to thank you, Caryn, for
Mhm.
arranging this, and Mike for coming along and telling us. Thank you very much, guys.
I
Thank you.
appreciate
And
you having me.
Martin, I have a question for you. Are you going to be a good boy?
Well,
He'll think about it.
I'm about to say something that might get him up. No, he won't get upset about. Well, I got a nice invite the other day to come down and see the guys at Yaseu, and I thought, let's do it properly. Let's come down and talk to Dean, because Dean, you often sit in the background at shows, and I know that you like the people who work for you to be the limelight, the people to contact. But I've known you now, must be over 10 years, and you do more than, or Yaseu does more than, the amateur radio stuff. And I thought it'd be interesting to come down and talk to you about the other things you do. So, hi, Dean.
Hi, Martin. Thanks very much for coming to see us here in our premises in Fareham. Yes, well, I definitely have been here for quite some time. I often sit in the background, but we have other areas of the business apart from the amateur radio. We also are involved in marine communications and marine radio under the brand name of Standard Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
This started in around 25 years ago. We started with an entry-level handheld VHF device called the HX260, and gradually over the years we've built up a product portfolio ranging in a number of different handheld radios and fixed marine mount radios.
Yeah, well, as I say, I think I was talking to you before we started. Before I came into the hobby, it would have been about 25 years ago, standard were just getting out of the amateur market, obviously more for marine stuff. And I actually had a standard handy talkie or walkie-talkie, depending on which part of the world you are. And that worked brilliantly. And I can tell you now, it was only one more output. But I remember being down on the South Downs near Brighton, up on the Downs there. And I worked the repeater at Amersham, which must be sort of 60, 70 miles away. 1 watt. And I was talking to somebody in Reading. And it was a lovely handheld. In fact, I'm disappointed I let it go, but it's gone. Yes. But these things happen. But standard was always very, very good equipment, and now they've moved into the marine market. I'm sure it's very similar, the quality.
Yeah, as you say, there's a good pedigree there. So Yasme acquired the standard brand, I think it was in 1998, around that time, from Marantz. And standard was used as the domestic Japanese market for their wireless communication brand, and then the Standard Horizon brand came out of that for its marine business.
Yeah, and they certainly look interesting radios. Now, I'm not into marine, obviously because I don't have a boat, but looking at them, they look. I picked up a couple of them, and they're well built. They fit the hand nicely.
Yes.
I was looking at one earlier, massive display, channel number display. Is the sort of thing you'd need on a boat, wouldn't you? You don't want a petty little display like us amateurs use.
No, the larger display does help, and obviously a lot of time people have gloved hands as well, so you don't want the buttons being too small, so you can feel them whilst wearing gloves. The higher end models on the handheld market, we have one with inbuilt GPS, and it does basic navigation as well with compass display, and you can put waypoints on and a bearing to navigate via. And it also has a distress button, I can show you, on the rear of the unit. So that uses DSC, so it can send a distress call, and any other radio in the vicinity will be alarmed as a result of that call, and it will send the coordinates.
Yeah.
So if someone is a distress or a mayday situation, then that would help out.
Now I know this is not amateur, but that's a great idea of SIN. What Dean showed me was on the back of this walkie-talkie is a button which is covered by a flap, and that's the emergency button. So if you can't push it by accident, and have the world and his wife and the helicopters arriving and all those sort of things. But it's a great idea that you've got a certain button there to do that.
And it has to be a long hold and a long press, so to activate. And then each radio would have its own, well, depending on the portable one, would have its own MMSI number, which is an identifier specific to, in this case, a radio. And that information is stored with Ofcom when they get their ship's portable radio license. With the fixed unit, which is mounted with the boat, that's identified to the vessel.
Right.
So that again will have its own MMSI number, so Coast Guard or Rescue will know what boat that's registered with, what they're looking for, what type of size, so help out on any potential rescue situation. So that's another good safety for boaters.
Yeah, well, what you've just told me there, because I mean it's education to me, and hopefully a number of the listeners will enjoy this. Having the radio registered, say to the Coast Guard or whatever within the licence, if somebody's at sea and you need an emergency call to go out or whatever, a child could push a button to send the emergency for you. If you were, I don't know, you broke your leg, you're downstairs, you broke the leg, a child could send that emergency call out, and if they know what ship or boat the radio's registered to, they should be able to find you pretty quickly, I would have thought.
It would definitely help, definitely help in a mayday situation, yes.
Yeah, so No, they look very, very interesting. Now, looking around the table, you've got walkie-talkies, or what we call handy-talkies. You've got the base station ones, which I assume you put up on the near
like
the wheel.
A fly bridge or a console, yes, depending on the type of design of the boat. Yeah. And there's various types. We've got sort of like in each of these handhelds and the fixed units, we've got sort of an entry level, a mid-tier, and a higher, better specified unit. So we're covering sort of all budgets, really. And each model, as you step up, does a little bit more than the previous model. So the 25 watts output power on one like this, and then we go up to one that has inbuilt AIS, which receives the transmissions. It's a receiver, so it's receiving transmissions from those other AIS transponders in the area coming through the VHF antenna and any commercial vessels. So there would be a display on the screen of the target vessels in the vicinity of your own boat.
That's good. And, I would suggest 25 watts. In fairness, 25 watts at sea, where technically the only thing in your way is another boat. That 25 watts is going to be more than enough at sea for VHF, UHF, for the sort of range. And you're probably 50, 60 miles, I would have thought, on that sort of run.
Yeah, definitely. And particularly like in Solent, for example, when it's a busy commercial shipping channel, even if you're in foggy conditions, the AIS side of it can help out. If some of the smaller boats, they don't necessarily have radar, so it is a useful visual aid.
Yeah. That's good. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot a bit, but I'm sure you know the answer is going to be fairly a straight yes. IP67 rated, the radios? Or even better?
IPX8 for the fixed ones, and a combination of some IPX7 and IPX8 for the handhelds. So IPX8, I think, is... I think you're looking at...
Sorry, I'll put you on the spot.
No, it's I should know. It's 1.5 meters for 30 minutes IPX8 and 1 meter for 30 minutes on IPX7. But like these front panels are all fully waterproof. So and even these three of the handhelds I've got here are floating handhelds.
Oh, right.
So that's another benefit.
I was thinking if somebody fell overboard with a walkie-talkie, they're not likely to be below a metre very long before they surface, and therefore being water resistant is going to be really handy.
Yes, and a couple of the models we got shown here, they've got a water-activated strobe light as well.
All right.
So as soon as that's submersed, it makes a contact here, and then the strobe light it's quite a very bright light, will start emitting. So it's another aid of a rescue. Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds really good. Now, I see these over here. Are they external handsets for radios? I'm sorry.
Yes, they're what we call second station command microphones, and we do a couple of variants of those. One is a wired one that can fit in a rear of a radio such as this, and then you can have it as a second station on a larger boat. So full functionality of the radio from a remote point on the boat, so you don't have to go back to
the main unit.
Yeah, the main unit. And they even have a distress on the rear as well, so the handset can activate a distress call if needed. But you can monitor, and you can also use that like an intercom.
Yeah.
So between the point of the second station and the main unit, you can have a conversation with other members of the crew.
Yeah.
And we do for the higher end model, we do a wireless option one as well, which works over Wi-Fi with a little plug-in dongle on the rear of the main unit radio, and you can connect the second station microphone wirelessly and use that as a remote microphone and function for the main unit itself.
Sounds good. Now, I know our Carl is downstairs. Does he ever get upset that you can wireless a microphone on with Wi-Fi onto a radio and you can't on amateur stuff?
Yeah, I guess. I guess we should be able to move the technology between the two areas.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. That was a silly question, but it was. Yeah, your marine stuff's obviously been thought about, and you've done some great stuff here. I look across the back of the table here, and unfortunately, this is only an audio, but I look across the back, and that's not an ICQ case, is it?
That's not an ICQ case. That is a case for our smallest. I know it's not good for the listeners, but the smallest handheld radio we got here is tiny.
All right.
And as a result of it being tiny, although it's fully waterproof, it doesn't float because it can't displace its volume. But by putting it in the suitably orange-coloured vinyl holster, then that will enable this to float should it will go overboard.
It's great
As
idea.
you can see, that's fits easily in the palm of my hand.
Yeah.
Much smaller than the palm of my hand. But that's a 6-watt output.
6 watts?
6 watts, that is. So.
God, dear. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, it is small, but there's nothing wrong with small on this occasion. It does fit the hand. The controls are quite big on it. So, there's no excuse for not having a radio when you're a marine, I would have thought. Something like that certainly is interesting. And the model I'm looking at, if you guys want to look it up, is the HX40.
That's just under 10 centimetres high and just over 5 centimetres in its width. Yeah.
Lovely little radio, and I'm sure it's waterproofed, and you can get a case, as Dean said, that'll make it float as well. So great.
And all our products, I didn't mention earlier, but all our products have a 3-year warranty as well. So when we have a service department here for any issues that may arise, but 3 years warranty, which is a good reassurance of the brand and the quality.
Yeah, it gives you a nice warm feeling, and I have seen Dean's repair centre downstairs. It's good. It's got some nice test equipment. I wouldn't mind myself, but no, you're doing a professional job down there.
And it's like, for example, that HX40. That's currently you'll find it through the Chandlers for around about £120.
Yeah.
So
from a safety point of view, it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Definitely.
I've never done the marine licence, but it can't be a technical licence, I wouldn't have thought. It's more of a user, how to use the radio.
Yes, yeah.
Rather than the amateur licence where you've got to learn the electronics. But it certainly looks the part. I also spotted something else on the table. I don't know if I suppose see this. It's a Bluetooth headset. Is that for marine or is that for amateur as well?
For both. So that Bluetooth headset does work with the GPS-enabled HX891. So that's got Bluetooth built in. So you can then pair with the headset, and then you've got hands-free operation on a boat. So sometimes if you're sailing single-handed or just a crew member who needs to use their hands on deck, then you've got a wireless earpiece set. But that is the same model that does work for like the FT5 in the amateur market, or those other Bluetooth options that we have on some of the mobile radios.
Yeah. So the device we're talking about is, and I'll give you this phonetically, Sierra Mike dash Bravo Tango 20. Nice little Bluetooth headset that we hadn't really thought about from an amateur point of view much. I knew that there were devices, but it's kind of one of those things in the amateur market you kind of bypass. But if you're at sea, it's probably more important.
More relevant, because I guess because the very nature of sailing, you're using your hands whilst there, and I guess for the amateur market, maybe unless you're mobile, not so much so thought about. But that SSM B20 Lite uses for the new FTX1 field Optima. Once you've got the BU6 Bluetooth module installed, that's the option that you can have for for that. So there's a bit of a crossover there between the two markets.
Which makes sense, because it means that if you've got a product that works and it's reliable, why not move it into other markets?
And some of the optional hand speaker microphones that you see here can work like for the FT5, FT70, etc. So they will work and plug in our marine radios as well, and they're fully waterproof too.
Yeah.
So,
well, I actually, we'll go off a little bit of a tangent here. I've got two walkie-talkie or handy-talkies, as they say in the States. I've got an FT2D,
yes,
and I've got an FT70, and I love both of them. The 70 doesn't have all the super-duper functionality that the FT2 does, or the FT3 or FT5, but I think I like the audio on the FT70. Nothing
Yes.
wrong with the other one.
yep.
But my hearing, I have bad hearing, as Mrs. B will say. So I don't hear half
Selective
the time.
hearing.
Well, not only that, but yeah, I have a notch in my hearing, which is
Okay.
documented. And yeah, I'd say I have no problems with the FT2, but the FT70 just gives me a warmer feeling when I'm listening to it. But nothing wrong with it either way. So, yeah. Okay. We're running a reasonable amount of time. What else would you like to tell us, Dean, while you're here?
Specifically on marine, or
You
on other-
can. Or we've got the time together, so...
Well, if I want, I can go through a bit more on the radios. They all have an FM radio in there as well, so
Right.
that's another feature, as well as the marine VHF band. They can be tailored to the UK market for local marina channels. So they're a good sort of option for leisure, recreational boaters. We do have some commercial type, I haven't shown them here, suitable more for the industry type ports and etc., because they have VHF channels that can have 40 PMR programmable CTCSS channels in them as well, so you can use them on the VHF PMR band as well as the marine band.
Right.
That dual functionality, which is good in an environment, say it's a port or harbour area. So yeah, that's probably covered most of the handheld options that we have here.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I've been very impressed with your product range.
Thank you.
And, yeah, as I say, having had a standard radio, and I know Yaseu bought standard, but having had a standard radio, and you showed me down in the workshop with one of them apart, they're built very well, guys. You know, you got to be serious about this. They're a good piece of equipment, and I'm quite impressed.
Yes, they've proved very well from our early starts in the early 2000s, attending various boat shows in the UK and Europe. We have a network, because we supply from this office into Europe, into the Middle East and Africa. So we have various distributors and dealers in majority of the European countries and some of the African countries. So yeah, it has to be a good, reliable product. If there are faults, usually they're user-induced, where they may have inadvertently broken a screen or wired up something incorrectly to their own boat's power. Then it does happen. So our service department can resolve those problems.
Or the last thing, they didn't read the manual.
Yes, reading the manual is not often the case that people do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the manual always looks very fresh in the box when they're sent back to us.
Yeah, often I would suggest. Listen, Dean, I'm going to thank you for your time. I think
That's no problem. Thank you for
I think it's been
paying
well
us a
worth,
visit.
and thank you for inviting us down. It's been well worth coming down to see you and the guys. And at least we've been able to tell people about some of your other products. So I think it's a good one.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you.
No problems.
Whether it's across the pond or over the channel, the ICQ podcast is international.
Herzlich willkommen in Deutschland. 73 de España.
By amateurs, for amateurs.
Well, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed this episode's double feature there. And to say we're promoting certainly interesting things in our hobby there. The Krampus event to get you in the mood, obviously, for the season upcoming, and an interesting look at Yaseu UK and some of the other things they do alongside, obviously, the amateur radio sort of market that we'd all known well and for. So, just give you a flavour that there's more to Yaseu than you may think. So, Dan, I know you certainly enjoyed your trip down to Yaseu, and certainly it was interesting to see other stuff in the business down there.
Yeah, it certainly was, Colin. I mean, the guys are always very chatty to me when they see me, and your mum and I had a really good afternoon with them. Went down, saw some of the other products they do, and yeah, it's nice. They've now fully settled into their new building. They've been there a couple of years, and I should have got down before. Been invited down a number of times, but yeah, I think although it's not 100% amateur radio, I think there was some good information that Dean gave us that what goes on in other parts of radio. So I quite enjoyed that one.
Yeah, and of course, I suppose one part of radio just bleeds into another part of radio at the end of the day, doesn't it? So, I say very positive in that respect. So, no, that's good to see. And then obviously getting yourself in the Christmas spirit. So the big question is, are you on the naughty list or the good list this year, do you think?
Well, I ain't sure. This is responding to Krampus Night, which is an event happening the day before St. Nicholas arrives with the presents for the good children, and the bad children get terrorised. And this is a bit of fun, and please take it as fun. Caryn and a number of guys are doing a special event on this. Krampus Day is actually the 5th of December, but they're going to be on the 4th and the 5th. So, it will be a good special event to work just for a bit of fun going up to Christmas. And don't worry, if you're outside the US or you don't have HF, they're going to be on our talk group as well at odd times. So nice to get involved with this sort of event, Colin.
Yeah, certainly so. Well, I say, talking about getting involved, it's the last chance to sign up to our newsletter to make sure you're part of our end of year survey on how to shape your amateur radio podcast. So we're doing a sort of survey out to our listeners via, that newsletter group to gauge what you like, what you don't like, etc., and see what we might do to improve things for you going forward. So please make sure you go to ICQPodcast.com and sign up for the newsletter. We really would appreciate you doing that from there. We'd also like to thank, along with our monthly subscription donors, Pete Yang, Zulu Lima 4, Tango Echo, and Daniel Robinson, Golf Mike 6, Charlie Mike Quebec, for their very kind donations this episode. Thank you, everybody, for helping us continue to pay our way, keeping your show advert free, and keep us on the air every fortnight. Really do appreciate you doing that for us. And we'd also like to thank Caryn Money, KD2 Golf Uniform Tango, and Edmund Mike 0 Mike November Golf for joining the news roundtable. So a smaller roundtable this episode due to reasons, but still interesting opinions and debate to had there, and hopefully to whet your appetite there. Right, Deb, well, say time to wrap up show 471 of the ICQ podcast, and obviously the important job to do now is to make Mrs. B a cup of tea, and hopefully find a nice biscuit or a cookie if it's from our American friends in the jar for her to enjoy.
Yeah, we'll have a nice cup of tea in a minute, me, your mum and I, and I'll find you on my treat, no problems at all. So all in all, quite a good, I think quite a good episode, although unfortunately Dan and Ed Durant didn't join us for family reasons, but very fun episode anyway, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. So all left for me to do now, Colin, say 73s.
Yep, 73s, and I'll catch up in a fortnight's time. 73s all.